Despite the fact that this figure has a slightly superior paint job, I still think the original's better. Nothing beats the original. Nothing also beats a Jet 2. What's going on, everybody? Republic Cinema here, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the new Transformers Studio Series More Than Meets the Eye Target exclusive Voyager class War for Cybertron Optimus Prime. Now, out of the 4 new Studio Series Target exclusives, the recent ones of course, I saved the best one for last. In case you're wondering, is this the last review I'm going to do for this year? Not really. I'm still waiting on that reissue for the Studio Series 86 Blaster. I might end up reviewing that figure this year instead of next year. Anyways, in the previous review, we've taken a look at the repaint for Megatron. Now we're going to take a look at the repaint for Optimus Prime. I can't believe that much like Megatron, it's already been 2 years since this mold first came around. It's absolutely insane how time flies. Another important thing to point out, I've never played War for Cybertron, or Fall of Cybertron, or any of the Transformers games in that matter. And I don't really plan on doing so anytime soon. However, I'll still take a look at the figures because they're still really cool, which is what we're going to do with this figure. But before we take a closer look at this figure, we'll take a quick look at the packaging. But before we do that, this video's Bible verse is taken from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, and it reads, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." Anyways, that's pretty much it. Now let's take a quick look at the packaging. On the front of the box, you get this nice artwork of Optimus Prime in both his robot mode and his alt mode, along with the rest consisting of various words, names, and logos. Same thing goes for the top. On the left side of the box is a more zoomed in look to the artwork of Optimus Prime. On the right side is an extension of the artwork from the front. And on the back of the packaging, you get a little info of what you get inside, along with the top left of the back of the box showing a picture of what Optimus Prime looks like in the game. And that's pretty much it for the packaging. Now moving back to the figure. To start off, the paint ticket sculpting is pretty good. The figure kind of looks similar to the original, aside from the darker shade of silver from the chest, a few painted in scuffs and scratches, and parts that originally weren't painted on this figure, now painted on the Target exclusive, such as these 2 spots right on the legs, and on the head. Nice looking head sculpt, by the way. Of course, in terms of details, this figure looks really nice. I've always thought this figure just kind of looked the best out of all the other War for Cybertron figures. I mean, just look at the limbs. They're pretty beefy. Well, that's because the legs are kind of loaded with an excessive amount of kibble. I guess you could say the same thing for the back, which has a bit of a hollow gappage right here. And I guess same thing with the legs, somewhat. But hey, you know what? Everything tabs in fairly well, except maybe whatever you call these type of tubes. They're not tabbed into anything, so if you mess around with this figure enough, eventually you'll find that these tubes will be a little more like this instead of how they should be. In terms of QC, for my copy, the joints are alright. Nothing's necessarily too tight or too loose, except maybe the knees for the legs and maybe the feet as well. On second thought, I kind of find the feet for my copy to be slightly looser than the feet on my copy of the original War for Cybertron figure. The joints on the thighs are kind of tight. Aside from that, the joints are relatively alright. If there's any other slight issue that I have with my copy of this repaint, that for some reason the 2 chest pieces aren't closed in 100%, leaving this crack in between. Which I guess you could say isn't too much of a deal, but here's a comparison with the chest from my copy of the original Prime compared to the chest piece on my copy of the repaint. And yeah, something's a little off here. Moving on to accessories, starting with his, I believe it's an ion cannon. Here's a comparison to what the original looks, and there's not much of a difference. To have this figure hold his gun, what you're going to do is swap out the left arm for his cannon, of course. And there you go. There you have this figure with his ion cannon, or whatever it's called in the game. I kind of wish there was a way where you could have this figure hold this weapon with his hand, but I think there's an upgrade kit that covers for that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not into collecting upgrade kits. To store the arm, open this part up just a bit, and this tab will peg it onto that slot like so, and then go ahead and close this back in. That's pretty much where his left arm goes when you have this figure with his gun. Also, there's nowhere to store the gun. The second accessory he comes with would be his axe, which, unlike his gun, actually has a paint difference to the original axe. To have this figure holding his axe, what you're going to do is disconnect this part, go ahead and plug the rest of the axe onto the hand, and then come back to this part and just plug it back in. And there you have Prime with his axe. Also, there's one more thing you can do with this weapon. You can go ahead and untab one half of the bigger part of the axe and flip it out to the other side, which does make the axe look a little bigger. However, in my opinion, I've always preferred this look for his axe. Also, since there's no weapon storage for this figure, there's nowhere you could store the axe onto. And then there's one more thing that this figure does, is that you can actually open up the chest, which reveals a matrix, which is also removable. But unfortunately, you can't have this figure hold his own matrix with his hands, which, yeah, it's a bummer. Moving on to articulation, ball joint at the head. In case you're wondering if this figure has butterfly joints for the shoulders, yes, but at the same time, not really. Full rotation at the arm, bend at the shoulder, bicep swivel, bend at the elbow, wrist swivel, waist swivel, the legs can spread, the leg can move forward, can also move backwards, barely, thigh swivel, bend at the knee, the foot can move up and down, can also rock from side to side, and that's pretty much it for articulation. Now moving on to size comparison. Here he is next to the original Studio Series War for Cybertron Prime, Bay vs. Prime Mark II, Bumblebee Movie Prime, Rise of the Beasts Prime, TF1 Prime, 86 Prime, Reactivate Prime, Devastation Prime, Age of Extinction Prime. To compare him alongside some other Studio Series War for Cybertron figures, here he is next to Bumblebee, Cliffjumper, Sideswipe, Ratchet, Ironhide, Barricade, the Decepticon Soldier, Starscream, Skywarp, Thundercracker, Megatron. To compare him alongside other Studio Series Target exclusives that came out this year, here he is next to the 86 Perceptor, the Decepticon Ground Soldier, the Decepticon Elite Seeker, Sideswipe, Wheeljack. Here he is next to the rest of the Studio Series Target exclusives, minus the reissue of Overload. These are all the repaints that came out this year that are Studio Series and also Target exclusive, which makes that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, for Overload. 7 Studio Series Target exclusives this year. I believe we had like 3 or 4 or 5 Studio Series Target exclusives these past 2 or 3 years. But this right here is the first time we've gotten a little more than 4 or 5 Studio Series Target exclusives in 1 year since 2021, which I believe also had 7 Studio Series Target exclusive items, but they were all reissues instead of repaints. And then here he is next to what I believe is every single Studio Series War for Cybertron themed figure. I also believe we were supposed to see one more Studio Series War for Cybertron figure, that being an Autobot Soldier, kind of like the Decepticon Soldier but for Autobots, which could have been an army build worthy figure. I don't know what happened, but this figure ended up not being released this year, and to my knowledge, it's not confirmed if they're going to release this figure maybe next year or the year after. I'm sure they'll throw that figure in onto one of the waves for maybe 2026 or even 2027, because at least in the next year or so, we'll have a Studio Series War for Cybertron figure to look forward to. I'm not sure if we're getting anything else War for Cybertron related. Well, aside from that, be sure to leave a comment down below which character from War for Cybertron you would still like to see in the Studio Series next. Also, be sure to leave a comment down below which, out of all of the Studio Series War for Cybertron figures that have been released so far, do you like the most? And now let's get down to transformation. To start off, you're just going to want to straighten the arms out, open up this whole assembly like so, and before we do anything else over here, make sure you bring this whole piece down, rotate it 180. After that, go ahead and rotate these parts all the way until they're facing forward. Bring the headpiece down. Go ahead and close this whole assembly inwards, and then bring this whole piece down. Go ahead and connect the two sides onto the middle part of the front of the vehicle. Rotate the legs 180. Connect the legs, bring these two panels from the front of the legs out and up, collapse the 2 feet inwards, go ahead and bring both smokestacks upwards, disconnect the 2 panels and leave them out halfway, bring the wheels all the way out, bring this whole assembly up, bring the arms down, double hinge the arms out and backwards. Once you've done the same thing for the other arm, go ahead and connect the 2, come back to the legs, bring them all the way down, connect the folded in legs onto the 2 arms, bring these 2 panels down, collapse the side panels inwards by making sure that this slot connects onto that tab. Also go ahead and close this in 100%. Same thing for the other side. And here you have the Studio Series War for Cybertron Optimus Prime in his alt mode, which I guess is supposed to be a Cybertronian semi-truck? I could be wrong on the semi-truck part. Anyways, unlike Megatron's alt mode, this alt mode looks an awful lot cooler. The painting and sculpting Pretty good, pretty good. However, there's no denying that this figure also has some hollow gaps, most notably on the back. And here. Also, there does appear to be some robot mode kibble sticking out. But aside from that, the vehicle mode still looks pretty good. Moving on to weapon storage, you can simply plug the axe onto either side of the alt mode, and the gun goes on the back, as these two black tabs connect onto these two blue slots. And yeah, there's weapon storage in vehicle mode. At least the vehicle mode has weapon storage for both accessories. I can't say the same for the robot mode, though. Moving on to a brief comparison, here he is alongside the original Studio Series War for Cybertron Optimus Prime in his alt mode. Here he is next to the second most recent Studio Series Optimus Prime figure. And then lastly, here he is alongside the two of them together. Now that I think about it, I think it would have been cool to see the War for Cybertron Optimus Prime alt mode with the blue Bayverse flames slapped onto the front, and maybe the sides too. Yeah, that would actually be pretty cool. Anyways, be sure to leave a comment down below which version of the alt mode for the Studio Series War for Cybertron Optimus Prime you like the most. The new one or the old one? Also, be sure to leave a comment down below which alt mode you like more between the Western Star Prime and the War for Cybertron Prime. And I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all I had to say for the Transformers Studio Series Target exclusive More Than Meets the Eye collection Voyager class Devastation Optimus Prime. Overall, he's a pretty good repaint. If you weren't able to pick up the original, then I'd say go for this repaint. Otherwise, if you already have the original, I see no reason to pick this up, unless you really want to get it for a slightly superior paint difference. If you're looking to pick him up, he's available over at Target and Target.com. But personally, I recommend you pick him up over at the Target stores, as he's going to cost slightly cheaper in stores since the Target app does charge for shipping. However, it's all up to you whether you want to pick this figure up in stores or off the website. Aside from that, be sure to let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this figure. Do you like him? Are you going to pick him up? Do you not like him? Are you not going to pick him up? And if you like what you saw in this video, be sure to slam that like button, share this with your friends as well, turn on post notifications so that way you don't miss another upload, let me know how I did in this review video, and most importantly, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, and God bless. Teo!